So we heard there from Cliff Kendall, the Harlow doctor, who went 15 days on a hunger strike to highlight the cause of climate change. We're hearing about climate emergencies. A lot of the local councils I've seen in recent council meetings have been declaring climate emergencies. Do we need to get serious on climate change? Let's bring in Harry Wilkinson, a researcher at the Global Warming Policy Forum. Good morning to you, Harry. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
Cliff risking his own health there to highlight climate change. Is that the sort of thing we need to start doing to increase awareness?
Well, I would say certainly not. And I would say to Cliff, please stop your hunger strike because you've got the wrong cause. When we look at Extinction Rebellion, what we see is an indulgent middle-class doomsday cult, which is out of touch with actually what's happening in the real world.
Why?
Well, I think if you look at the world, it is better than ever before. I don't recognise the picture he was painting of the world getting so much worse. When we look at extreme poverty, for example, when I was born in 1994, it was 33% of the global population was in extreme poverty. Now it's less than 10%. We see literacy rates have improved. We see infant mortality is lower than it was before. We see the standard of living worldwide has increased enormously. And if we think in the last few decades, 1 billion people have been raised out of poverty in China, and that's been powered by fossil fuels. So rather than view fossil fuels as this entirely negative phenomenon, actually, we have to consider the benefits as well. And the benefits has been to lift so many people out of poverty. And even on the science, Cliff cited the IPCC. Well, even the IPCC admits that hurricanes, floods, droughts, none of these things that they can be sure are actually getting worse. They haven't increased in a line with projections. So I really think Cliff needs to redirect his attentions to more realistic objectives rather than having this huge decarbonisation effort, which I think would do enormous harm to...
But Harry, may I say, if Cliff was still on the line, he would say he has seen evidence with his own eyes. He's been and worked in sub-Saharan Africa, and he's seen what poverty and climate change can do. Last week in this country, we had our highest ever recorded temperatures. We're seeing this more and more and more. Is there not a fair amount of evidence to say that fossil fuels and climate change and everything is incredibly dangerous for our planet?
Well, I think if you look at the actual amount of money that we're spending dealing with the costs of climate-related disasters, we're actually seeing that fall as a share of global GDP. So I think the key thing to understand here is, yes, it's real, there's a problem. We should be concerned, we should be prepared. We're going to become better able to adapt to those changes if we have a thriving economy that's actually well prepared and well adapted to these changes. When you look at the kind of people that Cliff has seen who are so suffering, and it's terrible, the situation that these people are in, we've developed through fossil fuels, and I think to then pull up the drawbridge is not going to be the way that these people can be better protected from the effects of climate change. And I think they're going to do it whether we like it or not. We see China building lots of coal power stations in the developing world, and that kind of activity is going to go ahead, and either we can help people to develop, or we can have this delusional fantasy that giving loads of people solar panels will somehow change the world for the better.
So what's the solution here? I mean, we've got lots of people declaring climate emergencies, lots of organisations, and you're referring to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC. What should we be doing?
Well, I think the thing to do is actually to address each problem directly. When we think about plastic in the oceans, for example, we've got to be thinking about how we're recycling and how we're processing our waste. Imagining that we can reduce our emissions and then there'll be more animals in the forests and less plastic in the oceans, I think is naive. And we've got to be thinking about tackling those problems directly. We've got to be thinking about more drought-resistant crops. We've got to be thinking about improving flood defences, direct solutions to direct problems. And I think that's what people will see as much more appropriate solutions. It's all very well for people to say that they want large emissions reductions, but it's actually the poorest people, even in this country, who have seen energy bills rise much higher than they would be otherwise without these significant subsidies for renewable energy.
Harry,
and they won't want to see the changes that Cliff is proposing.
Harry Wilkinson, we will leave it there. Thank you for joining us this morning. It is 8:25. A government spokesperson has told us we're going further and faster than any other.